The word excursion is defined as a short journey or trip, especially one engaged in as a leisure activity. A picnic, a brief getaway. Keep that definition in your mind. Because right now, the highest offices in Washington are looking directly into the cameras and describing a military flashpoint that just choked off 20% of the global oil supply as a mere excursion. This is not a slip of the tongue. It is a highly calculated linguistic anesthetic designed to keep Wall Street from collapsing into total panic. On March 11th, 2026, the reality on the ground shattered the illusion of stability. 3 commercial cargo ships were struck in rapid succession in the Strait of Hormuz. One was left engulfed in flames off the coast of Dubai, with crew members missing. The global oil market was immediately thrown into violent turmoil. Yet, the official narrative handed down by the administration and echoed by mainstream networks treated this like a minor traffic delay on a Sunday drive. Ask yourself a very simple question. Does your bank account feel like it is on a leisure trip right now? When you pull up to the gas station and watch the numbers spin out of control, does that feel like a minor inconvenience? We are witnessing a massive cognitive dissonance between what the political elite are telling us and what the economic data is screaming. The Dow Jones Industrial Average bleeds hundreds of points. The Consumer Price Index ticks up 2.4%, and the cost of basic survival for the American middle class evaporates. They call it an excursion because if they called it what it actually is, an asymmetric economic war targeting the foundation of the United States dollar, the markets would freeze overnight. But you cannot hide inflation behind press briefings. You cannot print your way out of a burning oil tanker. In this video, we are going to tear apart the excursion narrative. We will look at the classified realities, the shadow economy, and the exact reason why a $35,000 piece of plastic is currently destroying the wealth of the American taxpayer. Do not look away, because what comes next is going to directly impact your portfolio, your savings, and your family. To understand the magnitude of the lie we are being sold, you have to look at the geography of power. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a body of water. It is the jugular vein of the modern industrialized world. At its narrowest point, it is only 21 miles across. Through that tiny, fragile maritime corridor flows 1/5 of the daily oil and gas supply for the entire planet. Shutting down the Strait of Hormuz is not a tactical military strike. It is a global economic heart attack. When 3 cargo vessels were targeted by what the intelligence community vaguely referred to as unknown projectors, it sent a very clear message. The era of undisputed Western maritime dominance is facing a profound challenge. Right now, commercial captains are making desperate decisions. They are turning off their navigation transponders, plunging their multi-million-dollar vessels into maritime darkness, hoping to slip through the strait unnoticed. But hope is not a supply chain strategy. This is the ultimate chokehold. The adversaries do not need to defeat the United States Navy in a head-to-head battleship engagement. That is 20th century thinking. All they need to do is make the insurance premiums for commercial shipping so astronomically expensive that the tankers simply refuse to sail. If 300 massive oil tankers sit idle in the Persian Gulf because it is too dangerous to move, the global supply of energy drops off a cliff. Every single item you buy, from the food in your grocery store to the materials used to build your house, is transported using diesel fuel. When that fuel stops flowing, the entire system grinds to a halt. The mainstream media will show you pictures of burning ships to keep you focused on the fire. But the real story is not the fire. The real story is the silence of the ships that are no longer moving. And as we will reveal in the next few minutes, the weapons being used to enforce this blockade are not sophisticated billion-dollar stealth bombers. They are something much cheaper, much more common, and far more terrifying for the global financial system. Let us open the classified files on how this new war is actually being fought. You have been told for years that economic sanctions would isolate these hostile nations, starve them of technology, and render their militaries obsolete. That was the promise. But the reality is a catastrophic failure of policy. We are now living in the era of the dual-use dilemma. The drones and fast attack craft that are currently paralyzing the Persian Gulf are not built from exotic, top-secret military hardware. They are built from the exact same components found in the smartphone in your pocket and the lawnmower in your garage. Small gasoline engines, commercially available global positioning system modules, and basic circuit boards. This is the shadow economy operating in plain sight. Despite the heaviest sanctions in modern human history, a parallel global procurement network has emerged. Shell companies in Asia, brokers in Eastern Europe, and smugglers in the Middle East have created a dark web of logistics. They buy civilian technology from Western corporations and assemble it into deadly loitering munitions. This means that the very supply chains created by American and European companies are being weaponized against them. It is an incredible paradox. Western innovation is fueling Eastern asymmetric warfare. The mainstream media We'll not explain this to you because it exposes the total failure of the global sanctions regime. The politicians cannot admit that their financial blockades are completely useless against a decentralized network of cheap technology. When they talk about unknown projectors hitting commercial ships, they are talking about swarms of low-cost drones that cost a fraction of a penny compared to the massive warships deployed to stop them. But the real nightmare is not just that the enemy has these weapons. The real nightmare is how much money the United States is spending to shoot them down, and who is actually paying that bill. The answer to that question is hiding inside your paycheck, and it is accelerating the destruction of the middle class. This is where the geopolitical chessboard meets your personal bank account. We need to talk about the math of asymmetric warfare, because it is the most brutal wealth drain in American history. Imagine a hostile drone buzzing toward a commercial vessel in the Gulf. That drone costs approximately $35,000 to manufacture. It is cheap, disposable, and mass-produced. Now look at the American response. To intercept that $35,000 piece of flying plastic, the military fires a Patriot, or Standard missile. The cost of one single interceptor missile is roughly $4 million. Let that sink in. $4 million to destroy $35,000. Every time a button is pushed to defend the Strait of Hormuz, millions of dollars in American wealth evaporate into the atmosphere. The adversaries understand this perfectly. They do not want a quick victory. They want a war of economic attrition. If they launch a swarm of 100 drones, it costs them $3.5 million. It costs the United States $400 million to stop them. That is a negative return on investment that would bankrupt any corporation on Earth. But the government does not go bankrupt. It simply prints more currency to cover the deficit. This is where the trap snaps shut on the American public. When the Federal Reserve monetizes this massive military expenditure, it dilutes the value of every single dollar you hold. This is the hidden tax of inflation. The Consumer Price Index jumping by 2.4% is not an accident of nature. It is the direct mathematical consequence of printing billions of dollars to fight wars we cannot afford. You are funding this massive wealth transfer every time you buy groceries. The money is being quietly siphoned from the working class and funneled directly into the pockets of defense contractors who manufacture those $4 million missiles. The Excursion is highly profitable for a select few, but it is bleeding the American middle class dry. And just when you think the economic pressure cannot get any worse, a chilling ultimatum from the Middle East has just threatened to push the global economy over the edge. While Washington plays word games, the real power brokers in the Middle East are sending warnings that should terrify every investor and consumer in the West. Behind closed doors and in subtle diplomatic channels, energy ministers from the Gulf states, including vital voices from Qatar and Saudi Arabia, are sounding the alarm. If the Strait of Hormuz is functionally closed to commercial traffic for more than a few weeks, the global energy market will experience a shock that makes the 1970s look like a minor hiccup. Financial analysts at major institutions like Bloomberg and Reuters are quietly modeling scenarios where crude oil does not just go up, it skyrockets to $150 or even $200 a barrel. Think about what that number actually means. It is not just a figure on a trading screen. It is economic devastation. Marine insurance premiums have already spiked from fractions of a percent to 1 to 3% of the total value of a ship overnight. Some underwriters in London are completely refusing to insure vessels entering the Persian Gulf. Without insurance, the ships do not sail. Without the ships, the refineries run dry. We are looking at a scenario where gasoline at the pump could easily surge past $6 a gallon nationwide, crippling the logistics networks that keep America fed. Independent truckers, the backbone of the domestic supply chain, cannot absorb diesel prices doubling overnight. They will pass the cost onto the consumer, or they will park their trucks. This is the domino effect in action. The politicians in the White House know exactly what a $200 barrel of oil would do to an economy that is already teetering on the brink of a severe recession. It would trigger mass layoffs, corporate bankruptcies, and a total collapse in consumer spending. That is why they must downplay the conflict. They must call it an excursion to keep the illusion alive, for just one more financial quarter. But the warnings from the Gulf are clear. The era of cheap energy subsidized by undisputed American naval supremacy is rapidly coming to an end. And as the international situation deteriorates, a new, extremely suspicious narrative is suddenly being pushed right here at home. Right on cue, as the foreign policy narrative begins to unravel, the domestic fear machine is activated. In the midst of the Hormuz crisis, the Federal Bureau of Investigation suddenly releases a stark warning to local authorities. They claim there is credible intelligence that foreign operatives want to strike the homeland, specifically warning of potential drone attacks against infrastructure in places like California. This bulletin hits the news cycle at the exact same moment a deadly outbreak of severe tornadoes is ripping through the country. from Pennsylvania all the way down to Texas. Let us apply some critical thinking and basic game theory to this sequence of events. Is the threat of domestic drone terrorism real? In an age of cheap, commercially available technology, the vulnerability certainly exists. But the timing of this public warning is what should make you highly suspicious. Whenever a massive geopolitical failure occurs overseas, especially one that threatens the core economy, the establishment immediately pivots to domestic security threats. It is the oldest trick in the political playbook. If the population is terrified of enemy drones falling from the sky over California, they are not paying attention to the fact that their purchasing power is being systematically destroyed by inflation and endless foreign interventions. Fear is the ultimate tool for compliance. When you are worried about your physical safety, you do not question why the federal budget is completely broken. You do not ask why gasoline is unaffordable. The media seamlessly transitions from burning ships in the Middle East to destroyed homes in the Midwest, creating a constant state of sensory overload and anxiety. A stressed, anxious population cannot organize, cannot push back, and cannot hold their leaders accountable. We must recognize how the attention economy is managed by the intelligence community and the press. Whether the threat is real or a calculated distraction, the result is the same. The consolidation of federal power and the distraction of the American voter. But the reality of the economic collapse cannot be hidden by Federal Bureau of Investigation bulletins forever, because the working class is already hitting their breaking point. Let us step away from the war room and walk down Main Street, because the true cost of this geopolitical chaos is being paid at the local drive-thru and the grocery checkout line. We are witnessing the most aggressive corporate squeeze in modern history. Consider the ultimate barometer of the American working class, the fast food industry. McDonald's, a company that historically thrived on providing cheap calories to the masses, is now in full panic mode. They are rolling out $3 value meals in a desperate attempt to win back lower-income consumers who have literally been priced out of buying a burger and fries. Inflation has eroded the wages of the working poor so severely that fast food is now considered a luxury. But here is the sickening paradox that exposes the entire system. While the consumer is scraping together loose change for a $3 meal, the chief executive officer of that exact same corporation is taking home a compensation package worth $19.3 million. This is not just a story about one company. This is the blueprint of the current American economy. The wealth is concentrating at the very top at an unprecedented speed, while the bottom 50% of the country is fighting a daily battle for basic solvency. When oil prices spike because of conflicts in the Middle East, the megacorporations do not absorb the cost. They use the crisis as a shield to justify massive price gouging. They raise their prices beyond the actual rate of inflation, report record-breaking quarterly profits to Wall Street, and reward their executives with massive stock buybacks. Meanwhile, the average citizen is told they need to tighten their belts for the sake of national security. This is a quiet class war, wrapped in the flag of global stability. The destruction of the middle class is not an unfortunate byproduct of these policies. It is the intended feature. A population living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to afford basic transportation and food, is a population that is utterly dependent on the system. The economic bleeding does not stop at the borders of the United States. We are watching the first stage of a catastrophic global domino effect. When the Strait of Hormuz is compromised, the shockwaves instantly hit the global logistics networks. Major shipping conglomerates, like the massive Maersk line, are forced to make impossible choices. If they reroute their vessels to avoid the danger zone, it adds weeks to the journey and burns millions of dollars in extra fuel. This is not just about crude oil. This is about petrochemicals, fertilizers, and agricultural products. Goods are being delayed, perishable items are at risk of spoiling, and manufacturing hubs in Asia and Europe are bracing for critical component shortages. We are entering a new inflation supercycle, driven by supply chain weaponization. Europe is particularly vulnerable. Having already severed much of its energy ties with Russia, the European continent is completely dependent on maritime energy imports from the Gulf. If that supply is cut, European industry will face a deep, structural freeze. The global south, already drowning in dollar-denominated debt, will be crushed by the dual force of rising energy costs and a strong dollar. This puts the Federal Reserve in an impossible, unwinnable position. Traditionally, central banks raise interest rates to fight inflation, but you cannot use interest rates to clear a blockade of ships in the Persian Gulf. If the Federal Reserve raises rates to fight the oil shock, they will trigger a massive domestic depression and crash the commercial real estate market. If they cut rates and print more money to stimulate the economy, they will pour gasoline on the inflationary fire, destroying the dollar completely. They are trapped. The central planners have no tools left to fix a physical supply chain crisis. The era of financial engineering is dead, and the era of hard physical realities has begun. To truly understand this crisis, we must step back and apply cold, calculated game theory. In any conflict, you must ask one fundamental question: who benefits? If the American middle class is losing and global stability is fracturing, who is actually winning this game? The answer is found by following the money. The first massive winners are the titans of the military-industrial complex. Every time a hostile drone takes flight, a defense contractor secures another long-term government contract. A protracted, low-intensity conflict that requires constant missile defense is the most profitable business model on Earth. They do not want total war, which is unpredictable and dangerous. They want exactly what we have right now: a perpetual state of high tension that justifies infinite defense budgets. The second group of winners are the global energy giants and commodities traders. When fear grips the oil markets, the volatility creates massive arbitrage opportunities for Wall Street hedge funds. They make billions betting on the price swings, regardless of whether the price goes up or down. Finally, the political elite benefit from the crisis because it provides the perfect scapegoat for their own domestic failures. When the economy crashes and inflation destroys the working class, the politicians will not take responsibility for their reckless money printing. They will simply point to the burning ships in the Middle East and say it was an unavoidable geopolitical tragedy. The Excursion is a brilliantly designed cover story. It manages public perception while facilitating a massive transfer of wealth from your savings account into the vaults of the global elite. There are no accidents in global finance and foreign policy. Everything we are watching is a highly coordinated reaction to the shifting balance of global power. So where does this leave you? The independent thinker, the investor, the citizen who refuses to be collateral damage in their grand geopolitical game. You must recognize that the mainstream narrative is designed to keep you passive and unprepared. The institutions that are supposed to protect you are the very ones managing your decline. To survive this economic transition, you must radically shift your financial strategy. As the fiat currency system is weaponized and inflated away to pay for these endless foreign entanglements, you must look toward hard, tangible assets. Gold, silver, and critical commodities have historically been the ultimate store of value when sovereign currencies collapse under the weight of debt and war. You must also pay close attention to the energy sector. Whether you agree with it or not, the companies that control the physical flow of oil and gas will hold immense power as supply chains continue to fracture. Do not be shaken out of your positions by the daily panic manufactured by the news cycle. Look past the fear-mongering about domestic drone strikes and focus on the fundamental data. The Consumer Price Index, the M2 money supply, and the strategic petroleum reserve levels, education and critical thinking are your greatest defenses against the shadow economy. You must become your own analyst. I want to hear from you. How are you positioning your family and your portfolio to survive this massive wealth transfer? Do you believe the administration when they call this an excursion? Or do you see the writing on the wall? Leave your insights in the comments below. Engage with the community, because sharing independent knowledge is the only way we break their monopoly on the truth. Stay sharp, stay vigilant, and never accept the narrative at face value.